Hey everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Closing Report for February 25th, 2016. I am Frank Ochoa with analysis for the current session here. What you see is price in the ES in the daily time frame has rallied all the way into 1939.5. Price dropped down in the previous session, coming very close to our 1871 zone, which I mentioned it would be the last test, last-ditch effort here for bulls to defend and squeeze. And you know what happened in the previous session was we had a big time move down below. We had a big time kind of accumulation range that formed, and then a big time rally into the close. The current session pre-market, what I was talking about was 1921s. I mentioned bulls want to defend 1921s. We're kind of holding it now. And actually what happened was it held throughout the day and eventually got a late day squeeze into 1950, 1949. And again, that's our key level there, the midpoint of the August range. So very important level right there. And the way that this is playing out, if we get a pullback in overnight trading into 1939.5, or perhaps as low as 1930, it could offer an opportunity for bulls to defend for a shot at squeezing further into 1970. Beyond that zone would imply a continuation into the upper key levels at 2007, with a shot at seeing a move all the way back into the top of the key range here at 2075. So a big time move right now. It all came about upon a failure to see acceptance below that January low. That sparked a big move back to the close in the midpoint of that range. And now with this pullback and the failed push lower, that failed push downward has led to a slingshot move back up. And again, we'll be seeing how this plays out in overnight trading, but any pullback into 1939.5 likely going to be an area to defend as a bull for a potential squeeze higher. Failure to hold 21s opens up a retest back at lows near 1887s. Let's take a look at the intraday time frame. Looking at the intraday time frame here, we had the previous session was a big time day where we got a big rally off the lows. Anytime you see a move of that magnitude, there is a potential to see a trading range type of session develop, especially if the pivot range is rather wide. Pivot range for the session was rather wide compared to average, and that implied a trading range day. So right from the get-go, we were seeing price trade back and forth within the overnight range. Here's the overnight range, 1920.5, 1938.75, and it was impressive, but price traded within that range throughout the majority of that day. Later on in the afternoon, finally getting a push up and a continuation right into our 1950 half. That was really our final target on the way up if you were along from those 1811s, 1804 zone, or anything that came after that. We had 21, 39 half, and now 50 half. Those were the three upside targets. Each one reached at its own pace and needed kind of pullbacks to get there, but they got it. So it's going to be interesting to see how price responds when you get a pullback into 1939 half. Will the market defend and continue? Right now, that's the expected idea. We're even into this LBN here at about 1937, but that pullback into that zone could spark a nice push higher. Failure to hold above that area opens up a retest back toward 1921. All right, let's take a look at crude oil. Here's crude oil on a daily time frame. What I mentioned before was that this failed range expansion here below 31s led to a snapback rally the previous session. And what I meant by any failed range expansion below 31s here would suggest a return back to 33.65, the HVN. So if you recall, I said any failed range expansion here, that would be a rejection. Any rejection would likely slingshot price back to value. This is value, 33.65. So you can see how prices have been trading in that area. We got a pullback into about 31.08, which is the bottom of MCVAL. And from there, we saw a slingshot move higher, big time push. But this is where prices have been offered, has been above 33.65 and into 34s. You can see very, very clear rejection of those prices here recently. But that also means that there are buy stops above those zones. So if price pushes through 33.65 and can test levels beyond 34.21, you can likely see a continuation into that 35.75. That was the initial idea after we resulted in this failed range expansion. Price pushed down and popped back above that zone. When that happened, the expectation was for a likely push back toward 35.75. It's just been very laborious trying to get there, and now you're seeing that this area is defending, so that could finally fuel that move into 35.75. But right now, within the range, not a whole lot of of edge inside the range here. You got to play the edges or look for expansion from that range. So taking a look here at the intraday time frame, you can see how today played out. Kind of a downtrending channel throughout most of the session here, right there. And you can see the waves in this session. We got a move downward here, and then boom, higher low led to a squeeze, and it took 5-day VPOC bid. Once it took 5-day VPOC bid, the sell programs throughout the day changed bias or switched to a bullish bias there. You can see how it had been defended at value throughout the session, offered at value, and then right here took value bid and rallied this thing significantly the rest of the session. So a big time move. And now we got to see how price plays on the pullback here. 32.46 could offer an opportunity to defend for a continuation into 33.65 and beyond. So right here, that major bend in the profile, that LVN, that's 32.46. Any pullback into that zone could offer an opportunity to squeeze into 33.65 and 34.21. All right, let's take a look at gold futures now. Gold was very interesting because we saw a push into our key level here that we were looking for a reversal in. As you recall, the previous session here, we got a push beyond the previous high here at 1240.6. Price closed back below it. So I mentioned any retest of that zone should be defended for a shot at taking this area offered at 1225.30 and returning price to the HVN below at 1196 half. So right now, that's in play. Price came back to that level several times and was defended throughout the day, and we closed just below that level. We also have what appears to be very close to an inside day here. Even if it's not perfect, the idea is that prices are coiling here. And if you look at the uptrending market, one thing that was fascinating was when we first rallied here in gold, it was off of, you got a big time push up here, and then you saw right here composite VPOC go bid, and then it held up here and shifted VPOC. Rather, held here and shifted VPOC to 1196, rallied again and shifted VPOC higher again. So basically, composite VPOC has been bid this entire time, which shows the strength of this market. However, now we're sitting at highs here, and we have a very heavy profile on the top end here. If prices can't hold above the 2-day lows here, you could easily see a move back into 1196 half, followed by the potential to see a push even farther to the downside. But we know that we've been in this key range here. So trading back and forth could continue to fill in the holes in this profile ahead of the next phase of expansion. So looking at the intraday time frame for the gold chart right now, you can kind of see how that played out. This failed hold above 1245s here when offered. Price came back to it, offered again. Boom, here's that test into the weekly high, which I mentioned this morning. Offered off of there, came back to it, offered off of there. So, this is a big time zone. Above 1245, we'll finish this trade off and squeeze big time. But holding below that level suggests that bears are clearly defending this zone right here, and we could be looking at a push into 1196 half. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, looking at the NQ, this one here has been bullish off the midpoint of the key range. And that's really, really cool to see. We had a push down below this 38.93 half. Very well told, where I was talking about the previous key range low. That's the August low. Failing to hold there suggested a move into 42.26 where we've held the entire time. Couldn't get any traction beyond that level, so price pulled back. And when it did so, it hit 40.85.75. That's the midpoint of the key range. And then, boom, from there, we're starting the short squeeze to the upside. So this looks very, very healthy for at least a push into 43.09. If you recall from the previous session, I also talked about 43.09 being the 100% weekly expansion target. So anytime you see a big-time rejection of the lows like this and a reversal during the week, you have to point to the opposite direction to see how far can we go before we start reaching the opposite end of the ADR targets. You can see a PivotBoss ADR target here and here, and that implies that we still have room to run given the current average weekly range. So heading into the upcoming session here, we could see a full-on follow-through into 42.87 and 43.09 and still be within the realms of what's average for a week over the last 10 weeks. So very clear here. I would say a pullback perhaps into 4,200, 41.97 could offer a buying opportunity overnight for a continuation higher into 43.09. Now looking at the intraday time frame for the NQ, you'll see right here, this one was very intriguing here to start the day. We had an impulse range that we fired off from 42.29 half, 41.86.75. The midpoint here at 42.08. Prices dropped through the bottom of the range and held here off the 25%, and then rallied back up, and boom, boom, all pullbacks into the bottom of the range where defended, which eventually led to a short squeeze back to the top of the range and then through it. So on a day today where it was kind of seen as a potential digestion day, again, because of how prices have rallied the previous session and how wide the daily pivot range was. You see how wide it is here, actually an outside value range. That was the implication we were likely to see trading range movement throughout most of the session. So it was important to see how price dropped down here, held the center pivot point, and then rallied the rest of the session while still maintaining its kind of digested approach. So big time push up. I would say pullbacks again offer an opportunity to defend and squeeze for a shot at seeing an upside push into those upside weekly targets. Again, 43.08 quarter, 43.11 half a key level. So those are the upside targets to be shooting for in the upcoming day. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the rest of the week. Good luck and trade well.